Funny how secrets travel. I start to believe if I were to leave, the sky the man shakes his hands held by a cruise beyond. Cruise me, babe. A blonde beneath beyond, beyond, beyond. Blow me down, no return. I'm the so cruise me, baby, on. And the rain sets in. It's the angel man. Anti-rain. Cruise me, baby. This one's a real the clouds lie, and the tears of mine over your head. Victims love, be real, dearest love, before we breathe. And the rain sets in. It's the angel man. And the rain sets in. It's the angel man. I'm T-Rex. Cruise me, baby.
All right, man, that is the best song and the best movie in my opinion. But yeah, welcome everyone. I have Blood Locos, Jason, the real John Connor. Sounds like BLA is gonna hop on, and we're also waiting for Matty. Hopefully he can make it. Tonight we're gonna nerd out on David Lynch. It's been like well over a year, right, since his passing, and I remember when that happened, we were trying to get BLA to do like a tribute stream, and he wasn't really into it. And I don't know why, but he's just not like a mega fan or anything, right? But I've gotten a sense from him that he's not really into the whole like it was all a dream explanation of movies. I wouldn't say at all that that's what David Lynch, can be chalked up to, but definitely one of them. It was all a cope dream, and I'm sure we'll get into that. So yeah, but first I just want to, I think we should just start talking about Blue Velvet, because I know, Jason, you said that in order to understand David Lynch's work, a lot of the keys are there in Blue Velvet. So would you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's my personal opinion. I think so, because it's obviously one of his earlier works, and I feel like some of the motifs and patterns that he's exploring and using in Blue Velvet are recycled into the rest of his works and expanded upon in his other works. But we'll get into all that. Yeah,
like what's lurking beneath, the facade of normalcy of everyday life, and Americana and suburbia and stuff like that. So let's just start out before we get into that. I really want to play this review by Roger Ebert. So let me get this going here. Sorry. I'm such a boomer. Let me get rid of this thing. Stop screen. Share. Okay, here we go. Oh, wait, that's not the right one. Sorry. I'm looking for Blue Velvet. My bad. There it is. Okay. Do I have to remove that? Sorry, boomer tech here. There it is. Okay.
Our next movie is named Blue Velvet, and already this movie has caused a firestorm around the country, with some advanced reviews calling it a masterpiece and others calling it sick and depraved, and still others calling it a sick, depraved masterpiece. The movie takes place in a small town where a young couple stumbles over a mystery that begins with the discovery of a severed human ear and leads them to suspect that the ear might belong to the missing husband of a local nightclub singer. Here's the scene where the young couple, Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern, make a plan to spy on the older woman.
There are opportunities in life for gaining knowledge and experience. Sometimes it's necessary to take a risk. And I got to thinking, I'll bet someone could learn a lot by getting into that woman's apartment. Sneak in, hide, and observe.
Sneak into her apartment?
Yeah.
Are you crazy? Jeffrey, she's possibly involved in murder.
In the movie's most shocking scene, the nightclub singer, played by Isabella Rossellini, discovers MacLachlan hiding in her apartment.
Who sent you here?
Nobody.
I've seen you before.
I sprayed your apartment. I took your key. I didn't mean to do anything except see you.
What do you see tonight? Tell me.
I saw you come in. I saw you talk on the phone.
And then? Do you sneak in girls' apartment to see them get undressed?
No, never before this.
Get undressed.
Well, that's a shocking development. Later, MacLachlan befriends her after he finds out Rossellini's husband and son have been kidnapped by a perverted drug addict who has made her his slave.
Who is this?
A friend. He's from the neighborhood. We were just talking.
Oh. You're from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Your neighbor. But what's your name, neighbor?
Jeffrey.
He's a good kid, Frank.
Hey, you want to go for a ride?
No, thanks.
No, thanks. What does that mean?
I don't want to go.
Go where?
For a ride.
A ride. Now, that's a good idea. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Get your robe.
That's Dennis Hopper as the bad guy there. Blue Velvet is a movie that really challenges you to think about your reactions to it. And my reaction is, I think this movie is cruelly unfair to its actors. It was directed by David Lynch, the same man who made Eraserhead and Dune. And he's a talented director. You can see that here in scenes that have a lot of power. But he asked Isabella Rossellini in this movie to be undressed and humiliated on the screen, as few actresses ever have been, certainly in non-porno roles. And then he tries to take the edge off her shocking scenes by turning the whole thing into some kind of a joke. Well, either this material is funny, in which case you don't take advantage of your stars, or it isn't funny, in which case it shouldn't have so much campy and adolescent dialogue along with the really powerful sexual scenes. Sure, the movie's well made, but the more I thought about it, the less I liked it.
Well, I liked it, and I thought about it a lot, and I think you may be on the wrong tack in trying to feel sorry for Isabella Rossellini, because after all, she consented to do what she did on the screen, number one. Number two, I'm sure she's walking around wherever she lives, New York City or whatever, and survive the whole experience, just like Janet Leigh survived the shower scene in Psycho. So I don't think that that's pertinent. I think what's exciting about the film, and it is challenging, is it starts out with flowers and sunlight, and it's a happy little town, and then we dig deeper and we find out it's a nasty town, or at least a couple of people are nasty. And I sat there, and this did for me, and I use the Psycho example again, this did for me what Psycho did as a lot younger, which is eyes open and, oh my God, we're really getting in over our heads. And that's an experience which is challenging, shocking, but mesmerizing, and I like the picture.
Well, first of all, I don't think I'm on the wrong tack with Isabella Rossellini. In the first place, the movie was shot in 2 halves, so she had no idea, making her part of the movie, that all of the stuff outdoors and in the daylight was going to be smarmy and campy and funny with all kinds of in-jokes. And secondly, it seems to me that we can't divorce our reactions. It's not how Isabella Rossellini reacts to the fact that she's standing there nude and humiliated on the lawn of the police captain's house with lots of people watching. It's how I react. And that's painful to me, to see a woman treated like that. And I want to know that if I'm feeling that pain, it's for a reason that the movie has other than simply to cause pain to her.
Well, I think that the reason is that the film is a thriller and a shocker. I mean, there are people that get hurt badly in real life, and I think that this is a legitimate one. This is not a simple mad slasher
then
movie.
why is it a comedy?
Because he wants to set you up. He's a director, and he wants to play you like all the directors, the great directors want to do. He wants to play you like a piano, which is have you smile and then swing you right into some depression.
Yeah, well, the next
I think
time
he got
somebody
you.
wants to play me like a piano, he better get some music that's worth listening to.
I think this is a good song.
I love how sassy he gets. So, Jason, why don't you tell us why that's your favorite movie?
Well, first of all, that first boomer, he's a toddler goober, doesn't get what he's watching at all. And the second guy actually had good points. I agree with the second guy. That was Siskel and Ebert, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, Blue Velvet. For me, so Blue Velvet was the first Lynch film that I ever saw out of his whole catalog. And when I saw it, it was incredible how you go to this. To me, it was just like a perfect depiction of every person's real life, right? Like the loss of innocence and sort of, Jeffrey Beaumont, right? He's sort of representing the person watching the film. Like, yeah, we're naive, we're watching this movie, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare, right? The dream becomes a nightmare. And then we realize just like the depravity and the damage and the evil that Jeffrey is living this very normal life. He's going to college, his dad gets sick and that sort of throws him off a little bit. And then he finds the severed ear that throws him off a lot of it, but he's also curious because he's like, how can I, I have to reevaluate all of my reality. Because up to this point, it was roses and picket fences and Dalmatian dogs on the fire truck, right? Everything was perfect and orderly and everything's great and taken care of and accounted for. But now all of a sudden my dad had an aneurysm and there's a severed ear in a field. Oh no, he's sort of coming into confrontation with the true nature of reality, right? Which is not all golden sunshine and blue skies, right? And it forces him to become curious about it because he has to examine this so he can reevaluate sort of his perception on reality and life. And what got me about the film is the ending, the resolution. Like, he's in this perfect surface level world. He sort of crosses a barrier into the underworld. And then through experiencing this underworld journey, he comes back out to the surface level and all is restored. His dad's back in good health out of the hospital. Frank Booth is vanquished. The robins are eating the bugs, pest control, I love how he shows up at Dorothy's as a pest control guy, right? Because he represents the robin in the film. And just like when Sandy, his, I guess, for lack of a better term, love interest, Laura Dern, she shares her dream, right? She says, I had this dream and everything was dark and terrible and no love. And then all of a sudden there was light and a bunch of robins. And of course, symbolically, we often associate birds with like angels or higher spirits, of good or whatever. And so for me, watching Blue Velvet, seeing this journey go from sort of, you know, I'm here, then I'm down way down here, and then I come back up here, and everything is sort of made right again. In fact, it's made better because now he's confronted the demon, Frank Booth. He's vanquished the demon, Frank Booth. Now he can go back to the normalcy, knowing that Frank Booth is gone, that this awful thing that was hidden from me, I faced it, I got rid of it. Now I'm, and to me, that's just incredibly beautiful. I love it.
It's beautiful, but there was a campiness to the beginning, right? But then that ending was like way more campy than the beginning. Like it almost seemed like unreal, like, and that's what I didn't like about the ending, was that it was like a little too much, like a little too perfect.
I can't watch. I literally cry every time I watch the ending, and I've watched it like 100 times. Like I love it. Like just the slow pan on his ear, hearing the bird song, and his mom calling out, "Lunch is ready," and his dad, "Oh, hi, son." I mean, it because the whole movie centers around the severed ear, right, and what that represents. Like, and of course, I don't want to dominate the conversation here, but like ears, they dictate someone's balance, right? They equilibrium. Like if you damage an ear, you're going to lose equilibrium. And to me, this is a beautiful metaphor of sort of the spiritual balance beam we all live with, right? Like there's a dream here, there's a nightmare here, and we're taking the narrow path down the middle, and we have to sort of not teeter one way or the other, because both are sort of an exaggerated illusion of what's actual, right, in the middle. And that's why I think what you mentioned as the campiness, I actually see that as speaking to the theme of the film, that yes, when you fall one way or the other into these illusory sort of experiences, it is surreal and it is cheesy or cliche. That like the cliches are the archetypes of reality. That it's real. It's anyway. Yeah.
I just realized, Jason, you kind of sound like David Lynch a little bit. Your voice. What I was gonna say was like, what really got me was after he actually ended up like getting intimate with Dorothy and he actually abused her. He goes home and he has this breakdown, right? And like he kind of has this like Jungian, like Petersonian, like, oh, there's evil in the world, but there's also evil in me. And that's what really, like, I don't know, that really stood out to me. Because I don't know, I think I asked you guys, like, on a previous diner, what was your realization of evil? And mine was that Mandalay Bay shooting. And that's when I kind of woke up, and you kind of like, it's like a disturbing awakening when you realize the evil in the world, and then you realize how you can be quite a monster yourself. And Blood Logos, did you like this movie? I think I saw you saying this was your favorite too, right?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Blue Velvet. It's been a long time since I watched it. I'm more of a Twin Peaks fan, but I think they do share a lot of similar themes. A lot of his work does. The duality and balance between light and dark, good and evil, mundane and macabre.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially like how he seems to admire Dorothy, but at the same time, there's like this repulsion toward the whole thing she's involved in, and I don't know. There's just this duality to everything. He has this in all of his works. Would you say that he's kind of like Gnostic? I know he's into like meditation, and he was into meditation and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's big into the meditation stuff. Yeah, I definitely think there's some Gnostic influence there for sure.
Mm-hmm. And Jung, Carl Jung.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, Jung was very Gnostic as well. So.
Yeah. So, what also got me about the film was obviously Frank Booth. Would you say that his psychopathy is real? Like anyone could really be like that? The people really are like that? Anyone can answer.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I've seen people like with my own eyes that are like that. That's sort of the thing that's like so striking about the movie. That's like also striking about Lynch's work in general is that it's like, despite the fact that there is this extreme campiness to it, there's a realness to it. And if you've been around the block enough, you will encounter a Frank Booth, right? That's his name, Frank Booth, right? Or you'll encounter someone else like that. You know, the thing that struck me the most the first time I ever saw the movie was not necessarily like, it was the duck walk, and I just wasn't prepared for that at the very beginning. I was like, what? When Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern are on their first date,
yes.
and he does that stupid duck walk, and I was like, what? I just didn't know what to expect from that. I was like, what am I watching? Like, why am I watching this movie? It's the same reaction I had when I saw what's her face complain about the drapes in Twin Peaks, and I was like, I don't understand what kind of how could you put this in this? How could this be in the same universe as this sort of extreme esotericism and stuff like that? But that's the nature of it. And again, if you just keep exploring or just keep living, really, and eventually you will encounter people like that. You know, there's some psychos out there. So they exist.
Was that the PBR intentional?
What?
You're drinking. It was the PBR intentional.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
There you go. Nice.
I know. I was
Heineken.
We were talking about this. We were talking about this before the stream started, and I was like, if I had known this, I would have gotten a Heineken instead of a Pilsner. But you know, it's all right for next time when we do a part 2. I'll get Heineken. So.
Absolutely.
Mela,
go ahead, Jason.
On your last question, you know, I liked how you framed that because, you know, you said, you know, do you think, you know, anyone could become a Frank Booth, you know? And I think that's a great question because that's what Lynch is showing us in his works. He's showing us that, you know, yes, we're viewing it as like this external, separate entities clashing type deal, but oftentimes I find his work as metaphorically speaking about the individual internally, right? And like a lot of times, you know, some of us do encounter our inner Frank Booth, and we have to check our inner Frank Booth, you know, so to speak. And that's why I think Jeffrey is such a Chad, right? Because Jeffrey, when he's in the car with Frank and his goons, and Frank is, you know, molesting Dorothy in the front seat, essentially, huffing gas and molesting her. He says, "Hey, man, stop it." And Frank looks at him shocked because he's never been stopped and corrected in his life, right? And Jeffrey's like, "Stop," you know. And what a Chad move, because he's literally surrounded by Frank's goons, like he's outnumbered, and then he just punches Frank right in the face, and it's just like, yes, you know. And then they drag Jeffrey out of the car. And they all hold him up, and Frank starts putting on lipstick and starts like kissing him aggressively and violently. And then he starts reciting the lyrics of In Dreams to him, like as if it's him speaking to Jeffrey. And to me, this speaks to Frank's psychology and sort of the hidden past of what created Frank, right? Like you since we don't know what created Frank, we have to sort of assume and guess, right? But for anyone who's familiar with psychology and sort of the studies and literature on psychology, obviously this guy had a horrible childhood. Behaviors were modeled to him that shouldn't have been modeled to him. Abuse probably occurred, and it put him into this state of
incestual with his mother.
Exactly, 100%.
Which is why Dorothy looks like a mom.
Yes,
that total mom vibe.
Right, and why he's withholding her child, right? And you know, he's like this weird, warped, inverted, perverted young man. Like basically, I think he's psychologically stunted because of his childhood abuse. So he's trapped in sort of this infantile perspective, which is why he is the way he is, right? He's always shouting and hollering and cussing, and you know, he's acting like a 13-year-old boy, right? And he's surrounded by his buddy.
Doesn't he at one point also, even like when he starts huffing the gas, he even starts talking like a baby? Like literally he says like baby babble at some point. Yeah. mommy. Yeah.
When he molests Dorothy in the apartment, you know, he even says baby wants to
Yeah.
Yeah.
mate.
Mhm.
You know,
Yes. Yeah.
and so
Wait, I have
it's
a
definitely
question
this
about that.
motive.
Did they really did he really have intercourse with her at that time, or was that completely like some weird thing he was doing, humping her?
I think it was just like a weird power move because when you watch it, you're like, wait, that didn't. There's no way he could have, you know. The logistics didn't work, but symbolically it fits onto it. But yeah, no, I think Frank, you know, he's deep down under these layers that Frank has buried and lost, basically this inner child of his. You know, he like, for example, when he watches Dorothy perform, he's brought to tears. You know, he's still capable of perceiving the good and the beautiful. Something about the music touches him so deeply. And this is what's interesting, because every time he is touched that deeply, he immediately cuts it off, stops it, and lashes out, right? And so it makes me think, okay, this was a child who was vulnerable, and when they were vulnerable, they were hurt badly. Therefore, he can no longer allow himself to become vulnerable. He has to be the victimizer. He will not be the victim, right? Like psychologically. And so that's what I think we're seeing with Frank in the whole movie, you know? And that's why the scene where he drags Jeffrey out of the car and he puts on lipstick and starts smooching him. The way I interpret that is like, this is his inner child who's been begging desperately this whole time to be stopped and corrected by a father figure or a representative of God. He genuinely can't believe this man showed up, stopped him, corrected him, but he can't express it properly because he's so warped and twisted, right? This is the way he expresses it. Punching him, beating him up, and the whole time he's doing it, you know, he's like, "I'll F you, I'll send you to hell," you know? And it's like, because you know, love hurts, you know, especially when you're really abused and wounded and messed up and warped, right? Like, love hurts. And so anytime he's shown love or being stopped and corrected, he freaks out and he fights against it, right? And this makes me think of each one of our journeys in life, you know, where these fallen, sinful, confused creatures, life's unfair, you know, and then God just sort of grabs you and holds you to the wall long enough to you surrender and just repent, right? You know? And so that's how I interpret that scene, you know? And that's why I love Jeffrey. I think he's an absolute Chad.
Yeah, I would say he's oh, go ahead, Matty. What's up?
Hey, hopefully my audio is not too bad. I'm driving. But yeah, I wanted to say something that was interesting that Jason mentioned is, you know, if people have, you know, if you've seen Twin Peaks, which, you know, spoiler alert, you've had like 34 years to watch it. And if you haven't by now, then oh well. But, you know, at the end, when at the end of season 2, when Kyle MacLachlan's character gets trapped in the Black Lodge, because, you know, I can't remember who tells him, but somebody tells him, like, you have to enter with perfect courage. And he doesn't. And so he gets trapped there. And I think that Jeffrey is kind of, I see similarities between Dale Cooper and Jeffrey, and you could sort of, and I hadn't really thought of this before until Jason was talking about it, but you can sort of see where Jeffrey kind of did enter that situation with perfect courage, and he did come out, you know, on the other side sort of victorious. And even though, you know, it's different universes, different characters, obviously, but I think it's an interesting contrast between those two and seeing what the outcome is when, you know, even though Jeffrey was, and it's interesting because Jeffrey appears to be terrified, like he's kind of masking this terror that he's feeling in this situation, whereas, you know, Dale Cooper seems very kind of confident and self-assured at all times, but then seeing the outcome of the two of them, I think it's this very interesting contrast and a very interesting study in those two characters that Kyle MacLachlan played.
Yeah. How about you, Bill? Like, did you like this film, and what do you think of David Lynch's corpus in general?
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about baby man. Somebody was mentioning baby. Something like a baby. Somebody just said that. Yeah. It reminds me of my new idea for a movie, Baby Man. I'll tell you about that later. It's kind of Lynchian. It's a bit Lynchian. I was thinking about a descriptive term like from critics over the years about how to sort of summarize or describe, David Lynch movies in general in terms of their aesthetic. And it's kind of it's a weird thing because, it's just his name. It's sort of his namesake, the eponymous, Lynchian film, which sort of encapsulates like, what is it, like neo-noir, like expressionism, surrealism, a dream, this sort of uncanny thing happening in his films. And really, I'm just excited. I'm just looking forward to hear, I want to hear what you guys say about David Lynch films and how to sort of decipher them, because there's been so much, about him. I love Jay's take on Mulholland Drive and the sort of, DID breakdown of it. But with Blue Velvet, especially, we're still on Blue Velvet, right? You guys talking about Blue Velvet? Yeah, Pops Blue Ribbon. Nobody's done that yet. It's like this film is so terrorizing to me. It's strange because I think you were mentioning, like, I'm not like a Lynch super fan. I like parts of his movies. I did, a 5-hour analysis with Jethro a while back. We talked about Twin Peaks, Fire Walk with Me and stuff. And I think, like, my take on David Lynch is like Lost Highway was my sort of entry point into David Lynch, and it like terrorized me. It like utterly terrorized me. I didn't know what to make of it. I was in, high school. A friend like lent me the VHS, and it's like these long sequences of the highway, and it's broken up. It's got the David Bowie song that you're playing. And the videotape aspect of it, all this stuff. It's like, so it's beyond surreal. It's like total chaos to me. And I have a hard time making my way around his movies because I feel like the underbelly of the American dream aspect of his films, we're always like in 50sville. It's like Pleasantville, and there's, it's the flowers and the perfect, suburbia and all that. It's like, I think it's maybe that now we're at a point where we're so far beyond that, or that it's soaked into culture so much in our vision of America that we sort of expect that there's going to be a depiction of a dark underbelly, something like really, really dark that belies all that. But even with that, you can't really grasp, like, you can't predict what's going to happen in his films, like Finding the Finger or whatever, or just like Dennis Hopper being the way that he is in Blue Velvet is so like, it's so like primal. He's such a terror. He's really this chaotic like spirit embodied that is like so crazy that I don't really know what to make of it, besides the fact that it's just sort of like chaos and order presented on these two planes. And I don't know, after a while, I kind of think, I ask myself, like, what's the point? What's the point of it besides the surrealistic aspect or the dream, like the dream gone wrong? Okay, here's what I'll say. Maybe C.S. Lewis provides some insight into this, because there's that scene in is it Dawn Treader where they rescue the guys on the ship, and they say, like, where have you been? And they're like, oh, we've been in the land of dreams. And they're like, oh, that sounds great. And they're like, no, you don't understand. It's not good dreams. It's just dreams. So it's, there are good aspects of it, but a dream can be totally hellish. There's no control. So I feel like maybe that is sort of a way into David Lynch. That there's a dream-like thing happening, but it's not like how we think of dreams. A lot of it is totally chaotic and terrifying. It's uncanny.
It's uncanny. Yeah. I know that he said that how he gets his ideas is that it's more like fishing, right? Like, those ideas already exist. You just have to find a way to be a receiver of them. And I think that that's pretty dangerous. I know John and I have talked a lot about that. If you're Orthodox, you understand that. And he was just completely receptive to any idea. And that's why you see a lot of out of context scenes, especially like in Twin Peaks, is full of that. Like, nothing makes any sense, but it's there anyway. And I guess that's kind of a signpost that there is something dreamlike about the whole thing. And but he doesn't seem to have any reason, as far as like the interviews I've seen of him. He doesn't have any reason to put those in there. It's just irrational. And that's kind of what he's working with. But I like what you said about the kind of the duality of it. There's so much of that in his work. Somebody
should have asked him, where he got his ideas from. right?
Yeah.
Roach on Con?
You got him from Ralph's. You got him from the Ralph's on
One thing I like about Lynch is that he was
the Ralph's on Rodeo Drive.
and sometimes I kind of go back and forth on, did he actually, was there a reason for everything he did, or was it this just seems to fit? Because one thing I don't like is when artists, whether it's painters, writers, filmmakers, musicians, sit there and explain, like give you a detailed breakdown of what something they did means. I think that when you put something out there, like you just leave it open to interpretation. And Lynch was consistent in that he would never elaborate on anything that he did. Like there's that famous interview clip where he says that Eraserhead is his most spiritual film, and the interviewer says, well, elaborate on that, and Lynch kind of laughs and says no, and that's it. And so I kind of like that. And so with Twin Peaks, because it kind of oscillates between this just really unnerving, just sheer horror, and then these really kind of sappy sort of soap opera dramatic scenes. And it's like, was there a reason for this? And I think I tend to err on the side of that there's a reason for everything. We just don't know what it is that he knew why he did every single thing that's in any of his work. But anyway, yeah, I do think his that kind of method of just being open to everything. I mean, I think that can be good. I think it's a fine line, because it can be good in that, you should be open. If you're a creative type, I think it's good to be open to, wherever inspiration may come from. But, we also know he was really into like transcendental meditation, which seems like a cult, because I've never met or heard of anyone that does transcendental meditation that isn't like a Hollywood celebrity. So, and there's some pretty weird stuff that comes out of that.
That's one of the things that's, in some sense, I think that is the key to understanding David Lynch as the man and as the artist, because Mela, you touched on that just a moment ago, and I know about this to a great degree because I learned how to do transcendental meditation from watching David Lynch's interviews, and then also just doing my own like sort of research on it. And so I know exactly what he's talking about when he says like, oh, like I was open to the idea. Because what he does basically is he sort of either has actual dreams concerning the scenes in the movies, and he just puts them in there blankly, or he sort of has a thought about what the movie is supposed to, what the next scene in the movie is, and then he just has a meditation on it, and then the images that come into his mind as a consequence of the meditation, that's literally what he puts into the movie. I've seen interviews where he said exactly that. So essentially, and that's sort of the thing about that where it's like, there's a cultic sort of elements to his work, and that's exactly why, because he's literally like, he's allowing himself, because when you do that sort of thing, you're allowing yourself to be a radio receiver for, it's like what we talk about. We've talked about this with the whole process of theosis. I know that I think we have on one of the episodes, Mel, and like other Orthodox people in the sphere and priests and stuff have mentioned this. It's like theosis is essentially you're turning your internal radio to God's frequency, right? But what transcendental meditation does is you're just turning on to some random frequency and just letting whatever comes in play out. And if it's not on God's frequency, it's demonic, And that's really what it comes down to. And that's why it's so out of place, because he's getting just random bombardments of God knows what. But that's sort of, again, going back to the Jungian component of this, and I don't remember if it was Jason or Matty that said this, but I think you said this, Jason. It's like, every sort of piece that is you could say archetypal or Jungian or whatever, the drama that's playing out is a simulacra of the internal state of a person, basically, and that's sort of another element of what Lynch is trying to depict. But again, the way that he gets there is by allowing himself, from what I've seen him say in interviews, I mean, and it's been years since I've sort of really even looked into this stuff just because I was so closely connected to it. But from what he's said in interviews directly, he allows himself to become an actual transient sort of receptor to the things themselves. And that's what he puts on the screen. And so when you see that, that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, I agree. I like those. Let me just say real quick that I think that what Matty was saying, especially about, asking the filmmaker, the artist, for an interpretation of their own work, and that he doesn't give it, I think is usually a strength with an artist, if the work is of any merit. And people obviously consider his work of merit. I mean, it's certainly original and it's adventurous, it's edgy, it's like nothing else. It also takes a kind of provenance from melodrama, from kitsch, and sort of weird, like, golden age culture. It's obviously, there's a lot of his youth thrown into this, a kind of warped youth. But if you take sort of what that sort of loose, like, Buddhist, transcendental meditative, like, sort of paradigm, then emptying himself of everything, and then what's the first tenet of Buddhism? Is like all life is pain. Then
if suffering, yeah,
right. So if you look at it sort of through that lens, if that is the lens we're looking at it with, then, and that makes sense, because there's so much chaos. There's like not much to grasp and hold on to, except for what you were saying, like, about archetypes. There's the family, there's business, there's, sort of suburban life, and in a lot of his work, there's celebrity, there's, sort of Hollywood movies, like American culture. If I were a postmodernist deconstructionist critic of his films, trying to explain them, then I would certainly say that they tend to take the American dream and the various, like, signposts of what makes America, and then if they sort of, there's nothing else, it's just like consumerist stuff. If they take that, then it makes sense that it also goes into the inversion of that, and sort of exposes the dark subconscious mind of things. It exposes the hidden darkness in all this stuff. Like in Blue Velvet, like, the bad guy's like right there, is not only in the dark scenes, he's like, in sunlight scenes. The way that she's, exposed, the lady is, the singer Rossellini, like, she's exposed in daylight. So it's not just like the nakedness in the dark, it's also in light. So it's sort of bringing things to the surface. But other than that, I mean, that seems to be like a cheap way of, like, looking at American culture or film or something. So maybe the depth is that the depth comes to the surface. I don't know. I just find them so confusing and chaotic. Like for the same reason I don't like Lewis Carroll stuff.
That's
like
one of the
nonsense,
That's one of the sort of underlying principle, I guess, to build off your point. I see what you're saying. That is, I guess, when you really buy into that worldview of, like, this whole, this unconscious, like, punching forth into the when you see the world as that's part of the reason, I think, why that comes inherently with his work, because it's like that is essentially one of the tenets of his worldview, is that it's like, there is this sort of, whatever you want to call it, this, this underlying muck, this Gnostic sort of spiritual whatever that we manifest forth from, basically. And it's present in our ideas, and that's sort of where that comes from. So it's baked into, I get what you're saying. I think that's the thing. That's baked into the cake with his worldview, and that's part of the reason why it's there in the first place. That is why, ultimately, it is like, something is bleeding into reality, because in his worldview, that is essentially what every person has to deal with, this underlying, pre-existing, eternal sort of return thing, not eternal return, but this eternal like underbelly. It's just always there, and then it's just punching up into existence itself.
I think it's about balance. That's the main thing. He thinks that being exposed to the macabre will make you appreciate the mundane more, and that's part of the reason why he seemed so interested in the 1950s. It's right after World War II, very wholesome Americana kind of suburban white picket fence, and you can't really appreciate the white picket fence until you see all the mud and bugs right underneath it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also there was the Cold War, and it's kind of fitting that we're doing this after we just did the last diner about nihilist art, because we talked about this entrance into surrealism, and David Lynch was also a painter. He was a painter first, And I just think it's all pretty fitting. Now, Josiah Elleron has a question here. Can someone comment on the similarity between Lynch and Jung in their approach to discovering the shadow self, our initial avoidance, and when we finally are brought into the horror of our shadow and sin, what we find is so ugly, and it is not until we bring that realization into the light that we reach healing. I see that as kind of dangerous. I see that as like kind of the it's like the argument for doing ayahuasca. Like you have to like see hell before you can heal or something. That's traumatizing in itself.
There's a thing about Jung's ideas that's like there's an element of it. There's a glimmering of like, you know, as an Orthodox Christian, there is a glimmering, and I can see how I guess in some sense I think about it now that I'm Orthodox, and it's like, okay, this was in some sense, you know, like this was, you know, a foreshadowing of what, you know, what I was to understand is like what repentance is basically, you know, because there's an element of that with it. The problem is though, is that like, there's an assumption that you have to take the thing on in itself. You see this in Hinduism. This is one of the things that Father Seraphim Rose, you know, soon to be Saint Seraphim Rose, wrote about in Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, that there's this underlying assumption with specifically Hinduism, but other sort of pantheistic worldviews, that in order to, all things are essentially equal, basically. There isn't really a good or a bad. There are simply shades of things. There isn't evil, there isn't good. There's just simply things that are. And so in order to become, you know, what's good or necessarily complete isn't necessarily what is good. It is simply what is the whole set. And that's part of the problem with Jung's ideas, is that like there is an inheritance to that, where the whole point of the shadow complex and taking on the shadow complex is to actually integrate those things into your conscious life in the first place. And so you're not actually dealing with your problems. You almost double down on your problems in some sense. You almost, in some cases, I think you kind of end up making them worse because of that. At least that's how I understood it. But it's been many years since I've actually sort of delved into that, because that's, you know, not me anymore. So.
Thank God.
Yes. I mean,
just look at Jordan Peterson. Wasn't he big into Jung and this?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, yes, that's exactly it. You know, he basically, and in every turn he's had, now hopefully there's changes at some point. We pray that it does. But I mean, Jonathan Badzell actually said this in the recent thing with Jay Dyer, where he's like, what he's experiencing fundamentally is spiritual. His akathisia and this other sort of thing that he's experiencing is spiritual. And part of that comes in the fact that he's openly rejected Christ and at some level. Not in an atheistic sort of way, but he's basically said he's too afraid, and he's basically just he's camping out. And I don't see what he's experiencing now and that as a coincidence. I don't see that as a coincidence at all. I think they're directly related to each other.
Yeah.
You know, because you can only swipe away at the hand of your doctor for so long before, you know, you actually really start to experience the true sickness and the true nature of your sickness. And that's exactly what Jordan Peterson is experiencing. And when you buy into that worldview, eventually that is what it leads you to. Maybe not obviously akathisia, right? But like your demons will conquer you at some point, because there is ultimately an assumption with that like you can become the whole, you can become perfect. That's the whole notion of like manifesting of the self, is that it's like what these, you know, sort of quasi witchy people are always saying. It's like, oh, I can, you know, they're trying to manifest a goddess in themselves. It's this assumption that you can become divine. And that is fundamentally antithetical to what actual Christianity says, you know, because theosis does not make you divine. You know, theosis doesn't make you divine. You simply partake in the life of Christ. You tune yourself to his frequency, but that does not mean that you're divine, basically. And so anyways, I digress just to say
there is something unique with Lynch's films, I think, that other filmmakers sort of strive to achieve. And that's, Jason was talking about this earlier, about the moment when, you know, at the end of the film, you know, when there's this like a moment of sort of pure beauty. And I think that that's something hard to achieve in films, and something that Lynch tends to do well. That he has these archetypal moments, or moments of pure emotion, or something that go beyond fact or narrative, and they end up with a pure spirit of the moment. Yeah. So like there's pure terror. Yeah, there's pure euphoria, there's beauty, there's terror, there's chaos, nobody really does like dissociation like Lynch does. I mean, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, like, having a totally different character embody the spirit of, the dad or whatever, is crazy. I mean, that's just like, or when the nuke goes off in Twin Peaks, when we see that long extended shot of the atomic bomb. I mean, that's like cinematic, pure destruction, which is not. I mean, that moment to me is better than the entire Oppenheimer film as far as the subject matter.
It's ethereal, and the moment that I always remembered was in, like, I think it was like the second to last episode when, like, what's her face, the waitress and Big Ed. What was the waitress's name in Twin Peaks? What was her name? Shelley. Shelley was the younger one, but was the older one. Norma? Matty. What was her name? It was Norma, right?
Yeah, it was Norma.
Norma.
Yeah, Norma.
Okay. That scene when Ed basically, when he finally, like, leaves whatever her name, eye patch lady, and then he tries to go to Norma, and she acts, and then he just is sitting there like distraught, but then she decides to forego whatever it was she was going to do and just goes with him. That's exactly what you were talking about. That is, like, I don't think I've ever actually, especially because, like, the song they had playing in the background, they were playing that I Can't Stop Loving You live by Otis Redding from Monterey. Like, there's never been, I don't think I've ever seen something on television that did have that captured that euphoric sense more than that.
What's the name of the creepy crawly demon spirit in Twin Peaks? What's that dude's name with the
Which
hair?
one? The mini one? The little guy? The one that talks backwards?
Jason?
Bob.
It's the arm.
Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Yeah, Bob.
Yeah,
Bob. Demon's got a light. Got a light.
Hang on. Well, before we go into Twin Peaks, I know we've already spent like a whole hour on Blue Velvet, but at the very end, there's a scene that I think sort of before the restoration climax, beautiful ending, you have sort of the darkest moment where Jeffrey confronts Frank, right? And he kills Frank, spoiler alert. And I just thought it was incredible symbolism that David wove all the elements of the film into this one scene where Frank is, sort of searching around the apartment looking for Jeffrey because he's been tuning in on the police radio, right? And he's got the blue velvet draped over his silenced pistol, and the pistol is silenced. Okay, so the cutting off of the ear, ties in with that. He's looking for him, and Jeffrey's in the closet, armed with one of Frank's own goons' guns, and he shoots Frank in the head. And I was thinking about that pistol draped with the blue velvet over it, and I thought that's weird, right? Like if you were trying to get rid of somebody, you wouldn't take the time to like drape blue velvet over your handgun. You're not hiding the pistol in any way. It's just there as purely like this weird symbolic like combination. And I was thinking about Frank and how he's become so inverted. Like, obviously a pistol could be thought of as sort of, a male organ. And normally that's a creative, generative organ. But he has been inverted. So his is of destruction, right? And so it's draped in blue velvet, which is often associated with like corpse skin. It's dead. It's moldy, and he's got, and so I just thought that I just wanted to mention that symbolism because I don't think people appreciate, like, all the psychological stuff aside, all that stuff aside, the visual symbolism that David, that's what gets me hooked on his work. That's what I find the most interesting. Because for me, this is my opinion, good art is, whether it's film, music, painting, whatever it is, poems, anything, they're contemplative objects. They engage our consciousness. We have to navigate through this thing. We have to look at it. We have to perceive it. We have to, and so when I see these visual sort of symbolic layers like condensing, like they're introduced to us through the film separately, but then they all condense into like one image. That to me is like, yes, chef's kiss. That is beautiful. Like I love seeing that,
Yeah, the culmination. Well, the thing about, and I don't really blame Roger Ebert for saying what he said about the film. I mean, all this talk about, bringing the demonic to the fore. And there's, Jeffrey kind of embarking on this voyeurism. And it kind of makes us feel like we want to see it too. We want to see what happens. We want to be complicit in a way. And that's the sickening part of it. And I appreciate art in that way, but I don't think it shouldn't exist for that matter. But I don't have to like it,
that's a great point, Maya. That's a really good point. I like that. And it makes me think of Jeffrey in the closet, sort of peering in on this scene of this stuff happening, and it's almost like we were saying earlier, he's often depicting sort of the internal of a person, right? And it's sort of how we, if you think about it, it's how we are in our mind, right? We're sort of in the closet of our mind, watching our thoughts. We're watching all these thoughts coming and going, and we're like, what the heck? Why did I think that? Or, oh man, this is a nasty thing, or you know what I mean? And so like, it's like we're all like Jeffrey Beaumont in the closet in our own brain, watching like Frank Booth and Dorothy's go crazy in our own brains, like I just think that's interesting,
The dude with the video camera, right, in Lost Highway, like filming the mother asleep.
Exactly. And that's a great point, BLA, because in the movie, remember the guy's like, who are you? He's like, I'm you, and he's like, call your number. And it's his number, it's like, it's this weird that's what makes Lynch so confusing, I think, because we're not tying it back to his core ethos, his worldview, which is basically this fixation with consciousness and how it works inside you, and how, a lot of times, and this kind of goes to this dualistic oscillation that he plays with so much, is, you are simultaneously a thinker and the experiencer of the thought, right? And this is why dream is such a metaphor for him, because when you dream, right, the science says, it's something to do with like your conscious and subconscious, the veil between them sort of is removed. And now you're in this like weird loop of like your brain is creating it, but you're also experiencing it as if it's foreign to you. And so there's, I think that's what the core of his work is doing. It's exploring that phenomenon, that mystery of consciousness.
Yeah, like removing the veil. I know me and John, we talked about this with, we were talking about, what were we talking about? We were talking about the spiritual realm, like the aerial realm.
Yeah. The spirit.
Passion was saying that like God puts a veil on us because we're not ready to see like the reality of things.
It's one of the it's why when so immediately after you're baptized, you are chrismated, and the spots that the priest will chrismate on you are all like, I've heard Father Turbo talk about this, and it's basically like it's your entry points, right? The ears, the eyes, the mouth, the hands, the nose, the neck, right? They're entry point basically, and it is like, it is imbuing you with the Holy Spirit, but it is also like, and at the same time, it's like a defensive wall that's being put up, because it is not something that you really should be viewing even. It's not something that you should be. You don't want like, you don't want to see what's on the other side. You don't, you know what I mean? Like you don't want to see what's beyond the veil. It's not pretty. It's not something, but even things that are like,
you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that something.
I think about this. I think about this like, I think about, obviously, you guys know I'm a cat guy, right? So I think about this with cats. It's like cats can see like, just think about the weird stuff that cats do all the time. Like they can see like 90 times more of the light spectrum than we can, or something crazy like that. And it's like, I know my priest has mentioned to me another time. It's like, yeah, they can see demons, they can see angels, they can see everything. And a lot of times when you see them just like swiping and stuff, or they start acting weird, or they start looking like they're defending you from like weird stuff. It's like those things are just there all the time. It's like you don't want to know what's really beyond that. And that's part of the reason why this stuff is so dangerous, because it's basically you're entering into something that is inviting those things in. And once you take a bite out of that apple, there's no going back, for better or for worse, you know? So
yeah. And that's like Jeffrey.
And I think that's why Lynch, I've made the sorry, hopefully I'm not, I keep having audio issues, so hopefully I'm not like, is somebody else?
You're good.
I can hear you.
You're good. You're good.
Okay, I keep having to switch audio inputs, and so I'm hoping I'm not like talk is like, I'm getting different people's audio on different settings. Anyway, but I think, I've made the case before that Lynch, even though Lynch, I mean, from everything we know about him, did not have any kind of Christian beliefs, I think that Lynch is sort of, I wouldn't call him a Christian filmmaker, but I think the ideas that he's putting forth, the spiritual aspect of it is realistic, and it is in line with Christian belief, because you see where people, it's like, if we go back to like Twin Peaks, where Leland is talking about, this spirit comes to him when he's a child, and it's just like, hey, you like fire or whatever, and it's that sort of opening the door to it, and you sort of go down this, because nobody starts out, nobody just like wakes up one day possessed, right? It's like you have to make these choices, and these choices send you down this path, and people find themselves at a point doing things that would have been completely unthinkable, however much time, days, weeks, months, years, whatever, before, and you sort of get dragged down or you're not really dragged, you're sort of letting yourself go further and further until you completely have, no control. And that these entities, they sort of, they feed off of, in Twin Peaks, they kind of literally feed off of the pain and fear and terror and misery of others, usually innocent people. And so, there is that kind of real aspect of that, spiritual reality of how dangerous this is, and what you can find yourself, what a person can find himself or herself getting into, when they open themselves up to this. And so, yeah, even though I think it is kind of it is sort of in line, I think, with Christian ideas of that, despite him not being, to what extent he was aware of Christian theology, I have no idea, but yeah, I had more on that. Now I'm blanking out on it, but yeah, so but I think people get what I'm saying.
You bring up a very good point, though, and that's Father Turbo's talked about this immensely, that it's like people who are, it's part of the reason why a lot of people who are like from an occultic background, when they end up joining the church, a lot of times they kind of just get with the program immediately because they've already experienced spiritual warfare. Yeah. And that's, I think, part of the reason why, Lynch there's things that are accurate about how he depicts the spiritual warfare, because he is basically depicting that. The problem is that he doesn't necessarily realize, I wouldn't give him the credit that he realizes that's what he's depicting. Nonetheless, though, he's simply just reporting back what's coming to him, and it's like, God's thumbprint and nature itself bears witness to the fact of reality, to the fact of God, and to the fact of how things are laid out. And the spiritual warfare is basically the name of the game that we experience, and that's what that is. And so, it's like what David Bowie said, I've been to one of their meetings above a convenience store. We live inside a dream. That's like my favorite part.
I have a lot to say about that scene, actually.
Yeah, no, that scene goes. I have a T-shirt. I actually do have a T-shirt. Shameless plug. I do have a T-shirt from some company out of Austin, and it's just McLaughlin and David Lynch and David Bowie, just like a pose of the three of them with a picture, like a big giant picture of Dwight Eisenhower behind them, and it's so hard. And that scene, even though it's Even though Bowie's only in there for 5 minutes in the director's cut, it's so hard. It goes so hard. And then the scene when it goes so hard. But like you brought up, Matty, it's they feed on pain and suffering. That's literally, they're always going after that Garmin Bozia, but in the last scene that the Arm and Bob are in together with, they legitimately I want my Garmin Bozia, and it says it's pain and suffering. And that's basically what it is. These things feed off the pain and suffering of us, just like, wow, isn't that interesting? Just like actual demons do. Isn't that weird? Huh?
So why is it that we are all Orthodox and we really like these David Lynch films? Why do you think that is?
Well, I agree with Matty that this is they're touching on the core of reality, the mystery, this mystery of existence, of consciousness, of our nature, and I think Matty set it up beautifully when he was talking about, no one just wakes up possessed. You sort of, you make decisions and compromises, and before you know it, you're falling, right? And it made me think of that scene in Fire Walk with Me when Laura and Donna, after school, they're in the living room. They're both laying on the couches or whatever on the furniture, and Laura's explaining a dream she had to Donna about, have you ever had a dream where you're falling through space and you just keep going faster and faster until you light on fire? And it speaks to this idea of being ungrounded and the momentum and the inertia of life and the illusion just taking you away, and before you know it, you're in flames. And look at Frank Booth, right? He's running so desperately from the good and the truth and the grounding, right? That this man is literally like on fire, like he's just miserable, and I think it's excellent. And even the title Fire Walk with Me, right? It speaks to this idea of sort of, for me, I interpret Fire Walk with Me as, taking in the context of all the other mentions of fire in the series and things. I think what it's saying is, it's sort of a good metaphor might be the holy fire from the Holy Sepulchre. People are holding the fire up to their faces. It's not burning them. It's a tame fire. It's a purifying fire. It's not a devouring fire, right? And so I think fire is sort of this universal symbol, but it can be interpreted from either perspective. Which speaks more to that sort of dual Gnostic idea that Lynch has in all of his work. And one thing I noticed that speaks to this interplay of sort of the lower perspective of duality and then the higher perspective where the duality is sort of resolved or unified, if you will. Are you guys familiar with Abraxas?
I saw you.
Yeah, the Santana album.
Yeah. Well, the Gnostic Facility
chicken snake thing, right?
Yeah, it's like, so the Gnostic Facilities, I can't remember what century, like 3rd century, something like this, or BCE, or 300 BCE, something like that. He had this conception called Abraxas, where you have the symbol of it is basically, it's like a rooster head and then a man's body wearing armor with like a whip, and then it's got like 2 serpentine legs underneath of it. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it just like the Baphomet. Yep, it embeds the same ideas. So the rooster's head, right? That's the higher consciousness. That's sky. It's a bird. Sky. And then the serpents. They slither on the ground. They eat the dust. So you have sort of the high realm and the low realm, but they're unified in the form of a man, right? So each man, we have both of these capacities within us, both of these natures within us, right? We're sort of these base bestial animal creatures at the same time as we also have this capacity for correction and higher consciousness. And so that's what that symbol is sort of embedding. And what I noticed when I was watching Twin Peaks, I actually have some visual aids here. My eyes are gay, so I have visual aids. But see this first symbol right here? Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
This one here? That's an Abraxas rune. So you see how it's got the A, B, R, A, X, A, S, Abraxas. And that to me, when I saw the Welcome to Twin Peaks sign, it's two mountains, one of them slightly overlapping the other. So that sort of X triangular pattern is embedded in the Welcome to Twin Peaks sign. And I was like, okay, because I recognize that this Abraxas thing because I was familiar with it from my past life, if you will. And so then I started looking into Abraxas and what it represents. And this, it's a deity of duality is what it is. It's a Gnostic deity of duality. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, come to think of it, look at the Owl Cave rune. Look at the Odal rune. And then you have the Experiment, which is on the Scuffed Ace card of Mr. C in season 3, which is basically like a weird version of the Owl Cave rune, right? And so I was like, wow, all this, because, runes ties into, in the Great Northern Hotel, the Norsemen, businessmen are there, and Ben Horn is trying to get these Norsemen to invest in Twin Peaks in a development called Ghostwood. And so I was like, okay, so there, we have the Nordic rune references, I'm seeing runes inside the imagery, I'm thinking about all this stuff. And the Odal rune, it basically represents I think what it represents is a possession, inheritance, things like that, like estate. So it's speaking to like ownership over a land or an inheritance of a thing or possession of a thing, right? But when you watch Twin Peaks, you think about how you have this town, Twin Peaks, or in Mulholland Drive, you have the town of Hollywood, and there seem to be these spiritual energies that regional spirits, if you will, right? This is probably why the pagans had what they had, right? Like every region and everything had its own deity, this own spiritual sort of overlord over it. And Ben Horn is trying to get these guys to like develop this place. But I just think it's interesting that with what you can glean from sort of thinking about these symbols and possession, right? Obviously, Twin Peaks is about possession, demonic possession, rather than possession of property or something. It's spirits possessing people, right? And the estate is the town, Twin Peaks, and stuff like that. But I just thought that was an interesting thing that might cause someone to have some thoughts. You know what I mean?
I just feel like Abraxas is the name of the guy who was the cashier at the Popeyes I went to today. But it just seems like that his name would have been Abraxas. He looked like his name was Abraxas. I'm not going to say why. That seems like it. It just seems like his name. He looked like an Abraxas to me. I don't know why. Anyways.
I liked your post about the power lines and how it looks like the Abraxas symbol or the rune.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah.
And that goes
up again, Louis
Jason. Thing about these, go ahead, Bailey.
Yeah, if you go to my Instagram, guys, I have a whole bunch of Twin Peaks posts on there, full of interesting stuff. Which one did you want to see, BL?
I was just looking at them. I was looking at the Odal rune and then the one in the middle, the Owl Cave rune.
Okay.
So looking at my book of runes right here. Of course, I have a book
Yeah.
that I wrote called Runes.
Yo, what? Let me ask Jason. What's the what's the one next to the Owl Cave? What's that? Because what is that? Because I've seen that. Like, what is that thing supposed to be? The Odal.
What's
What
the
is that?
Odal rune?
What is
That's
that?
the south.
This one?
No. The other one. That
This
one.
one?
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah, that's it's Odal or Othala.
Okay.
So it's a Nordic rune, but the Germans used it, And what's interesting, and that's probably where you've seen it, because in modern times, some like white supremacy groups use that symbol often. But here's an interesting little tidbit about that rune. In the Third Reich, they used that rune was the symbol for the 7th SS Mountain Division. And you think of Twin Peaks mountains, right? A mountain dividing into two twin, like there's like this. I know that's a little reachy and that's schizo or whatever, but I find it interesting. I in my mind, it's like there's got to be something there you can mine out of that connection.
Yeah, there. I'll tell you where I saw it off when the stream's done. I'll tell you where I saw it later. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Moldy brought up the Bluetooth symbol, and that's kind of where I was going to go with this whole receptivity. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I really liked Lost Highway, but there was this big use of like old like phones and like weird TVs and to channel, I don't know, parallel, I don't know what you would call it, because there's definitely like this circular chronological thing that happens in Lost Highway. And that was my favorite out of all of them, definitely. But I don't know. I just like his use of like static and like video and, signal and stuff like that.
Signal coming into a vessel. Yeah.
And the electrocution of the guy, whatever his name was, the man who went to prison. And then he assumed this. I don't know what you guys would say. Did his identity go into that young man, or what would you say happened in that movie?
Yeah. Well, that's actually farther than I thought before. Like that is his spirit left his body and went into another person. That is actually very interesting. But I think he just well, it makes me think of that movie Fallen with Denzel and many other movies where they sort of depict this idea of a spirit that it sort of wears a person like an outfit for a while, does a bunch of crazy stuff, and then it just leaves and goes into the next one, and and it leaves like little calling cards to let you know it's this sort of like possessive spirit that's just sort of hopping from doll to doll or whatever. But I think it's similar to Mulholland Drive, where it was just like a DID break. He invented a new reality, and even in the invented new reality, the old truth is still bleeding into the fantasy. So that's why a lot of the elements are the same but slightly different. Like that's my take on it.
To me, like Mulholland Drive seemed like a total cope dream. Like this woman, she really messed up her life. She messed up her relationship with that lady. I don't know if you would say that, but and so she has this dream where she has a different reality with her, and there's this whole mystery thing. But that was all a dream. I feel like that is what that movie was. What would you guys say?
I don't know. I cannot stand a narrative where it was all a dream.
I know.
Where everything was a dream.
It's
so cheap. But I don't think Lynch does that. I think that his dreams, if it was all a dream, is a waking dream. It's a dream. It's dream-like, or it's a dream for the what you were just saying about the embodied spirit, or it seemed like a dream, but it wasn't an actual, night dream that you wake up from. A lot of Lynch, I think, is about like not being able to wake up from something. Certainly happens in Lost Highway. It's like I'm there with you right now, but I'm also here. All that stuff. It's like, how is that possible? But it seems somehow truthfully possible in terms of the sort of split that occurs in the narrative. But also, Blood Logos, you were going to say something a little while ago. You mind if I ask him about this? Sure. You were going to say that you had a take on something we were talking about, and I was interested to hear what it was.
Yeah. John mentioned the convenience store scene in Fire Walk with Me. And I think that's the key to the entire series. It explains the meta commentary. I think there's more than just his usual themes. I think it's I didn't originate this idea, but I do agree with it that it's a meta commentary on television itself, and it's like a self-aware TV show, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And David Lynch is playing himself in the show. He's the director, and he's also the FBI director. And there's a lot of there's just tons and tons of symbolism that points to that, not just in that scene.
Is that why he has the hearing aid in Twin Peaks?
Yeah, I think
because
that
it's like a
has-
director communicating.
Yeah, yeah, and he's yelling
Okay.
when when he talks. My background is the Black Lodge, and the tiling is static on a television. There's a lot of scenes where they're close-ups on their face, and you see light flashing. It's like they're watching a television. In the return, they return to the real world through electrical outlets. There's just so much stuff like that that points to that.
That makes so much. I've been a avid Twin Peaks guy for like over a decade at this point. I never once considered the static thing.
The audio when the nuke
point.
goes off, isn't there the sound of static? There's a
Yeah,
like
I think
a heavy
so, yeah.
sound. Yeah,
And
which I was
it's- and
attributed.
Remember
I
in
wish I
Fire
could
Walk
take
with
credit
Me?
for that, but
You remember in Fire Walk Me with the scene when Mike drives up to Leland and Laura's in the car, and like this happens other points in the movie too. Like they have a shouting match with each other, but there is like a slow sort of like static sound that's happening in the background. You know, they always it's always paired with the smoke smell, because someone will be like, it smells like burning oil in here or something. But there's like a lot of points in that. I think there's other points where that static sound accompanies it as well. So that's really
there's tons and tons of stuff. The
Yeah.
convenience store scene, I think they say
you're talking about the scene with David Bowie. You're not talking about the one where it's actually in the convenience store and it's like,
it's when they're in the convenience store and
from Pure, the one where the arm is like from Pure Air. That one,
exactly,
Yeah,
airwaves.
Yeah.
We descended from the air or something like that.
Yeah, you've seen logos, blood logos. You've seen Rob Eggers' piece on Space Odyssey, right? I'm guessing. Have you
I don't
seen?
think so. No.
No. Okay, that's because it's interesting because he brings up almost the exact same point that you do, just in a different sense, which is that that's the thing. The monolith in Space Odyssey is meant to be because the reason why the dimensions are the same. The dimensions of the monolith are basically a movie screen that's been flipped on its head, which also, by the way, is the same dimensions as a cell phone. Also, so the phones that we're all using right now have the exact same dimensions as the monolith does. But back then, it was the widescreen television or movie thing that was just flipped up like this. And basically, the point that Ager makes is that, the point he's making is that his argument is that Kubrick's underlying symbol for that is that film and television are kind of like he doesn't use these words. I think BLA, you've used these words, or Isaac Weishaupt has used these words, where it's like it's pointing to, it's an alchemical reaction, basically.
Yeah, it's a philosopher's stone.
It's a philosopher's stone, exactly. That is leading to a change in the psyche of the person that's watching it. Like, it's essentially stating, it's an argument that the medium is a spell cast, basically, and the effect that it has causes a change from one thing to another, basically.
He also says that the climax of the end of the film, when the guy is Jupiter and beyond, when he's in like the weird setting that and he ages like fast, and he's like, there's weird sort of French furniture, and he's like inside, he's lying in the bed, then he turns into the Moonchild. Yeah. That's essentially like the entities, or like the watchers, or the beings version of, like, it's kind of like a television set version of his life. So they put all the things there in the room that are going to be like things that the guy can grasp to, like, sort of, that's his life, to make him comfortable. It doesn't make sense because it's like a glass, interior version of this weird antique furnitured place, and that's where they transform him into the Moonchild to send him back. That's what Ager says.
And it turns and the end result is you become you lose yourself. That's the interesting
it's
part.
a McLuhan, yeah. It's a Marshall McLuhan way of looking at the importance of television as this sort of medium that affected people in a way where there's always a thing in films. A lot of people do this thing where they like go into the television. Yeah, it sort of sucks you in. It makes sense because they had vacuum tubes, the old televisions, and like Ager does the same thing with the Pulp Fiction watch analysis, where Butch is like watching the TV at the beginning. Yeah, it's like got the Eskimo on there, and that there's this sort of sound of television, and like it's his version of Vietnam when he sneaks back into the apartment to get his watch and come back out, because it's a sort of televised war in which he's playing the role of the protagonist in his own television show in life. Yeah, which I think matches Blood Logos, your thing about Lynch. And this weird hypnotic effect that television has on us, and it's a medium.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I think that's the thing is like, and it goes back to the fact that he has this occultic sort of background. It's like it's probably not a coincidence that this is sort of the thing that he's hinting at, basically. Because I think you're exactly right, dude. It's like it's like the fact that it's like these things come from static. They say they basically come from electricity, right? What's the first thing in the nuke scene when the God-of-Light guy, where does he go? What does he go to do? He doesn't go to he doesn't
go
to
videotapes.
Whatever. He goes to a radio broadcast and he starts like putting out like MK Ultra freaking he's like doing the
Botswana Alpha do anything.
It's the Call of Duty Black Ops. It's the numbers, Mason. It's the he's doing that. He's basically doing he's doing activation codes basically, right? He's doing that. He's doing subliminal messaging into a radio, right? At the time when that was the primary sort of consumption of the media consumption apparatus of the American people. So it's like these things, these incantations come into life, and the first thing that they do is to go to the media source, as it were, right? To the thing that goes beyond your gate, right? To go beyond your veil, essentially, that breaks through the veil,
I think the TV thing ties into the whole theme of balance as well, because he said in interviews that at the time he hated television, that it was just violence made to be consumed, and the murder was solved in an hour, and you forget about it later that night.
Yes.
So he wanted to balance that.
Yes, it's like that's why
he quit the show, is because they made him.
They made him have to solve the killer, exactly, which is also part of the reason why he wanted the killer to be something that was outside of the person itself. It was something that was ethereal, basically, that was all encompassing. It's also it's part of the reason why when he made Fire Walk With Me, he made it about the lead up to Laura Palmer's death and not about solving the larger mystery or like what happened to Cooper or anything like that, because he wanted that to be the final standing point of the piece itself, was to be like, the memory of this person is the thing that actually haunts this place, and that is the thing that needs to be remembered. It's the haunting sort of it's like in The Shining. It's like what what's his face says in Shining. Sometimes something so bad happens that's so bad in a place that the place starts shining because of it. All right, like places can be it's like what Russ said. It's like it's the bad memory of a town that's fading and it's fading fast. It's like a memory can stick in a place even if you've never been there. You can go and you can feel the vibe of a place, and it's bad.
Talking about Scatman Carruthers.
We got all kinds of ice cream. We got all kinds of ice cream here, Doc. We got chocolate ice cream. We got plums. We got pudding. We got everything. Yeah.
I have a direct Laura Palmer quote that relates to that. When she's talking to Agent Cooper in the Black Lodge in The Return, she says, "I am dead, yet I live." And
That's okay. That's again. You know what? Okay, bro. Let me tell you something. That's really, pardon my friend. That's fucked up. You know why? Because again, going back to the fact that like what Lynch does, he opens himself up to the demonic, right? And like in many ways, the Black Lodge is just hell, right? You know? Yeah. So you know who else said that? Like in real life? So like several saints have said that to people after they've died, basically. The most important of which being St. John Maximovich actually said that to someone after he died. He visited someone, someone saw him in a dream and he said, I know I'm dead, but yet I am dead, yet I am alive, basically. Which is again goes to the fact that like a lot of this stuff, you asked earlier, Mela, why do we find these things so attractive? Part of it's probably because, you know, obviously because not all of us, I don't think any of us here was born Orthodox. We all came into it. We sort of gravitated to this stuff in our past life. But it's also because, again, this stuff, it does, you know, maybe by accident, but it does, you know, and sometimes accidentally show the truth of the matter of the spiritual war. And I think that's an example of it. So that's very interesting. I did not realize that whole thing that she said, but that's, again, goes to the fact that many of this stuff is an inversion of the, you know, of the truth of things, you know, and of what God has put forward to us. So
on the flip side of that, I mean, I think that, yeah, the quote, the Laura Palmer quote that Blood Logos mentioned is very interesting because that's something I have heard from people who have, you know, maybe undergone like severe trauma from like abuse and things like that, is people, you know, have described feeling like there's feeling of like not being quite human, or a feeling like as if you're dead but still alive. There's this kind of like psychological, I guess, break that happens. And I've actually heard people put it that way, feeling like being the living dead. And so I think that speaks to, yeah, like just how evil the depths of evil that Lynch is, you know, talking about in his you know, shows and films of like what those people under the influence of those spirits are willing to do to like put a person in that kind of state.
Psychic vampires.
Yes.
I want to mention.
Well,
I want to mention something.
What's up, Jason?
Oh,
Well, I was just going to say that's exactly just to pull off what Matty said. Have you guys remember the movie Mystic River? Remember that movie?
Yeah.
You guys have seen that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, no, fair enough. It's
super depressing.
Yeah, it's a street. Yeah, very, very messed up. But there is a scene where Danny, who the movie opens up with, and this is like takes place in this, like the movie opens up in the 60s in like Dorchester, in some like, you know, Irish neighborhood in Southie, and you know the kid goes into the car of a Catholic priest who does, you know, what Catholic priests were notorious for doing back then in Boston back in those days. And so the guy grows up and he says, you know, not to give away the whole spoil of the movie, but the guy finds Skinner's a Chapo or someone who does reprehensible things to children, right? He finds Skinner's and he kills them basically. And he says to his wife, he's like, I feel like I'm a vampire because I go around at night. I don't even feel like I'm a person anymore. And I do things I'm not even sure if I'm doing them half the time. And it's exactly like what you said, Matty. It's like, you know, that is a real state that people go through. A traumatic event, a true trauma is in many ways, it's why, you know, the ID is a thing, and it's why, you know, the powers that be use that to mold the people they want into what they want them to do, because it breaks the person. And the only thing that can actually heal the person from that is God. It's fundamentally why the reason why, if a person doesn't have, Peterson always made this point, Jung kind of made a point like this. It's one of the underlying principles of the 12 steps. And it's true, because the only thing that can actually bring a person back or create them into something or rebuild them into something new is Christ when that happens. And if they don't have that, you end up with a person like Doyle from from Mystic River. You end up with, you know, Laura Palmer. You end up with some other sort of, you know, not just even a broken person. You end up with the living dead, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Well, on to Matty's idea about this between two worlds situation, the owls in Twin Peaks and what they represent, and sort of the rune on the ring, the owl cave rune. You remember the arm? He says, "This is a Formica table, green Formica table." And then you look at the ring, and it almost looks like it's made out of green Formica. And then I was thinking, like, okay, well, Formica is like it's an electrical insulator. So, you know, you have all these themes of like electric signals and magnetic or radio signals as metaphor of like spiritual influence or you know, what frequency someone's on, right? And the fact that this ring has this electrical insulator, and how the arm, or Mike, who's missing the arm, he only has one arm. And if anyone knows this, like when you put your hands together, you're closing an electrical circuit in your body. And so it kind of speaks to this idea of prayer, right? Prayer, you know, sending the signal, right? And this guy has one arm. He literally can't close the circuit. So he has to wear this ring with an insulator to like represent this like weird repelling of a signal or something. But anyway, the Owl Cave Room, and of course, Melly, you mentioned it. It looks just like the electrical towers along a highway, if you look at the structure of them. And then owls, and of course, you know, Native American animism. This comes into Twin Peaks because you have Deputy Hawk, who's a Native American, and he's always sort of giving his insight on happenings. He's sort of seen as sort of this wise spiritual guy amongst the sheriff department. So owls in Native American animism are messengers of death, seen as spirits of the departed. Natives interpret the owl's call as calls of the lost soul searching for the afterlife, and viewed as figures bridging the gap between the living and spirit world, embodying the mysteries of the night, serving as a reminder of death. And then in Fire Walk With Me, the arm, he says, you know, electricity from pure air we have descended, intercourse between the two worlds, fire walk with me. And so it's speaking to this whole idea of like, you know, stuck in the middle with you, right? You know, clowns to the left, me jokers to the right. There's these two mysterious, crazy worlds that we're sort of in the middle of, and all these things are sort of speaking to this idea of connection or bridging the gap in some way. And then another interesting thing I just want to throw in real quick, thinking about the owls, I was like, you know what? I wonder if scripture mentions owls, because of course that's always, you know, you think David Lynch is good at symbolism, you should read the Bible. That thing is dang. So I was, so I found this verse, Isaiah 34:14, and it speaks to this idea of like lands being inhabited by spirit, and sort of the fruits of that land are going to reflect the spirit inhabiting it, right? Same with trees. You know, you have you know, Mark and Galatians, you know, you have the, you know, good fruit and bad fruit, you know, tree parables, right? But in Isaiah 34:14, it says, "The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts on the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech of the owl also shall rest there, and find herself a place of rest. There shall the great owl make her nest, and lay, and hatch, and gather under her shadow. There shall be vultures also be gathered, everyone with her mate." And so I looked up the Hebrew for this word referring to owls. And let me see here. The Hebrew word for the Hebrew word is Lilith, often translated as night creature or night owl, but is also connected to like Babylonian folklore, Jewish folklore, regarding a female demon. And so, you have this whole situation with these owls and this owl cave and the lodges and surrounding Laura Palmer. And you remember that scene where she's like pale faced with the black lips screaming, she's almost like become this like demonic entity at this point. And that verse I found interesting because it says, some translations use satyr or goat demons, referring to wild goat-like creatures that in context represent the demonic, chaotic nature of the ruined land. The desert creatures, hyenas, wild goats, and night monster represent the complete abandonment of the land by humans, making it a haunt for unclean spirits and beasts. The imagery emphasizes that the land will be left entirely to the forces of darkness and desolation, a stark contrast to a civilized, inhabited land. And of course, when they talk about like when I think of lands being described symbolically, I also think of a person, right? Because God, lifted up the dirt and breathed life into it. We are the land, and so it's this idea of like if you don't prune your tree and feed your tree inside here, you're going to start bearing bad fruit and all that rottenness, and vultures are going to start nesting in there, and next thing you know, it's just like this abandoned, desolate wasteland where the demons rule, right? It's a metaphor for lands and people, right? What do you guys think of that?
True, it's 100% true. If you do not put like something will, again, it's another point that Father Turbo always makes. It's like, if we don't worship Christ, we will worship something else. But this is something even Young and Peterson and all these people like recognize. It's like there's a natural religious inclination, and it's like, and if we don't put it towards the proper thing, something else will be put in its place, basically. The interesting thing is, like, I was thinking about this. It's like what Bob said in the to go back to Blood Logos here. Well, he's AFK, but. To go back to what you said, Blood Logos, concerning like, the meta commentary from the Black Lodge scene. The one thing that I always stuck out about that, with what Bob said, the only line that he actually says in that whole scene is, I have after the Formica ring is presented, basically, right? Or the table, and then the ring appears, and the Garambozia appears. Bob says to the arm, I have the fury of my own momentum, right? And then that's when, the arm presents him with this wing I thee wed, right? Which essentially is it's the inclination that, like, okay, this ring now is the centerpiece, which it becomes now the centerpiece for not only the movie, but also for later on season 3. That's the thing that allows the transport between. Anyways, I have the fury of my own momentum. All right, we're looking at a Satan character. We're looking at a demonic sort of a literal demon here, and it's interesting that, like, what
Lord's dream falling through space.
Exactly. He's the thing that incants inside of the Father, right? Of her Father, I should say, not the Father, but her Father, right? I have the fury of my own momentum. Basically, it means to say it's like my own sin is the thing that's driving me, right? It's the whole notion of the bottomless pit. Bob is a representation of the bottomless pit. That's what sin is. Like, that's what sort of the abyss. Exactly. The abyss that stares, but the shit abyss, as Jim Leahy would have called it, right? If you stare long enough into the shit abyss, it shits back into you, or whatever it's called. I don't know. Whatever. So that's exactly. He is the incantation, and that's because that's what sin does. Like that's
what the firewalk is.
That's what the firewalk is, exactly. The calling out between two worlds, because you made that point, Jason. It's like, it could be like the Holy Flame, but that's the dualism again. Dualism of Lynch also indicates it's like the magician shouting out between two worlds. Really, it could very well be someone shouting out from hell, fire, walk with me. I realized that like maybe the second or third time I watched Twin Peaks, it's like that's a command. He's not saying that he's commanding fire to walk with him. What kind of fire is it? If you have to shout, it's like the rich man in Lazarus story, right? He's calling out to Abraham from across the abyss, right? And he's not calling out because he's not calling out because he's in a position of comfort, right? He's calling out because fire is walking with him, but not in the sense of the Holy Flame. Not in the sense of the burning bush. It is in the sense of he is experiencing the lake of fire. Fire is now a part of him, and it is consuming him. You know.
Yes. Yes. Well, what do you think?
What were you gonna say?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm just saying that's what it means. That's to me. That's what the fury of his own momentum basically means. That's the other piece of the meta commentary with Bob to build off of what you were initially saying. Now, what were you going to say after that? So,
I was just going to say, it makes me look at that scene where Gordon Cole comes to Twin Peaks and he's at the diner and he sees Shelley for the first time, and he remember the famous, yes, sweetheart, massive quantity.
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, please, my socks are on fire, sweetheart, because he's walking with fire, right? Like his socks are on fire, It's just like an interesting little thing that they threaded in there. But one last thing I want to say before I let some of the other guys jump in here, and it has to do with the Formica. Because in season 3, Cooper has this bizarre ace of spades with this like ant head looking thing on it, right? And it's supposed to actually represent the experiment, which has to do with the nuclear explosion and the entity coming from the atom splitting, tearing the space-time fabric and spewing out eggs, and that's where Bob came from, and the firemen and the woodsman. And anyway, with Formica, I thought it was interesting because I looked up ants because I was thinking about that ace card, and there's a genus of ants called Formica ants. And I was like, "What? This is crazy!" And so let me just read this real quick. Okay. So it is interesting that there's a genus of ants called Formica, commonly known as wood ants, mound ants, or field ants, characterized by their predatory and scavenging behavior and building large mounds from thatch or soil. Their predatory nature helps control populations of other insects like sawfly larvae, bark beetles, and termites. Pest control of the woods, preventing outbreaks of tree-damaging insects. And so, of course, Twin Peaks, it's full of Douglas firs and beautiful trees and fragrant trees. And these ants are basically like pest control, saving the trees. And people, nervous systems are sort of, the blood vessels in your brain, all this stuff sort of represents, trees, I thought it was interesting because there's that scene in Fire Walk With Me in the beginning when they're investigating Teresa Banks, and underneath the trailer is a little mound with the ring on top of it. The Formica Owl Cave ring is on top of a mound, right? And these are mound-making ants, named Formica ants, right? And so I just thought that was like, I can't believe I discovered that connection and what it might mean. I mean, I think it's interesting.
Is that the same ring that Mike gives to Laura Palmer when she's?
It is.
Killed?
Yes.
Okay. It is.
Yes. Yep.
And it's the same ring that I don't remember who it is. The guy gets killed and then he goes into the Black Lodge. His body winds up in the Black Lodge with it. I don't remember. He's like the henchman that initially shoots Evil Coop, right?
Right.
And then, it's like it allows for transport between this world and the Black Lodge or something like that. I don't exactly remember how it went, but yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, it's an electrical insulator. So it must be some type of like wearable that allows you to traverse through the portals of these different spaces,
Initiation
maybe.
ring.
I think in the scene where she puts it on before she gets killed, I think it stops Bob from possessing her. He's trying to possess her. And the ring prevents him from doing it, so he kills her.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's like,
that's interesting. No, go ahead.
That's all I was going to say. I was just going to say that's from what I understand about the symbolism of the ring. That's basically what it was. Like there's some property about the ring that prevents you from being taken over by Bob because of it, and so
yes.
Yeah.
Did you guys know that the the distributor that Lynch used to distribute his films domestically is called Janus Films, the Roman two-faced god. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yeah.
Janice, like Janice, the lady that disappeared, the one that likes cheese sandwiches. I mean, that Janice?
Yes.
That one?
Yes.
And she went to the woods at Twin Peaks.
That's correct. That's correct. But I thought it was interesting because Janus, it's the god of like gateways and doorways and transitions and it's like a threshold god, or and it's sort of it's looking at the past and future. Yeah, it's looking at the past and future simultaneously. It's also looking internally and externally simultaneously. So I just thought that was interesting that even the distribution company this guy's using maps onto like everything in the films. It's crazy.
Yeah, he was a true schizomaxer, dude. Like he was just one continuous schizomax. Like that's who he was.
Santos.
I can't tell the difference between real life and the movies, man.
That's right. That's why I had Dennis Hopper. That's right.
Exactly, dude.
Yeah. Yes.
My favorite thing about David Lynch is the music. I like the Angelo Badalamenti song, and and Lynch has an album himself. It came out like in the 2010s. He's got an electro song, "Good Day Today." Anybody ever heard that song? It's going to be a good day today. It's one of his songs. It's a pretty driving, like techno song. But I love that theme song. Moby took it. A bunch of people have taken it. Angelo Badalamenti took it for. He used partially the same theme, by the way, for the movie The Beach. You guys have seen that? It has the same thing. He was the same guy, so he sort of, he sort of cannibalized his own theme to use for that movie. But I really like that. That's like my favorite part of the whole thing is the intro, is the theme to Twin Peaks. It's just so perfect.
It's the best.
Yes, the tone.
He utilizes music in an amazing way, and what I really liked about Dune, I know no one likes that one. I kind of liked it. I know that he disowned it, but he did use Toto, and Toto's my favorite band, so I love him.
Toto's awesome.
Yeah, Toto's awesome.
Yeah. Yes.
Did you guys see Eraserhead? I haven't seen that in ages.
Yes.
But apparently it was about an abortion that he had. He didn't have the abortion.
Yeah, he said that in interviews. And it was also apparently he had an abortion before I think he has 2 children before they were born. And I heard him in an interview once saying how Eraserhead was sort of him dealing with the anxiety of bringing a life into this world. And of course, Lynch views the world as, pain and suffering and, some type of Gnostic simulation of hell. And so he was just grappling with intense moral quandary, mystery in his own mind with bringing a life into the world and what that means and stuff like that. And that's why he depicted the baby as such a disgusting, vile creature that's very annoying and demanding. And the Henry, the main character, he has no idea what to do with this baby. The woman left and he's just like, well, this is awful, right? It's really kind of a, he always said that's my most spiritual film or whatever. It's like, no, dude, that's your most dark film, dude. Like that's your most cynical, dark film. I like, and that's saying something because a lot of his films are very dark and cynical in ways, right?
It's spiritual in that it's actually, I will say this, I do think, because I talked about this with Mano on one of his streams once, where it's like, I think that's, I don't know if he means it this way, but I can see how in that sense it is his most spiritual film because it is actually like him grappling. Yeah, Eraserhead. It is him grappling with the guilt he feels of paying for the unaliving of his own child, basically. Right. Because it wasn't just like, he actually, I think, paid for his girlfriend or whatever to happen, and so that's what it was. It was like him dealing with the guilt of that, basically. Him trying to justify his own guilt to himself in that sense, which is why,
I think that's one of the things that, and obviously, I'm not excusing abortion, but I think that sort of fear of of being a bit, which I'm not a parent, but like I think that's Lynch is somebody who's really hard to read, because if you watch interviews with him, he was this very kind of pleasant, affable, like folksy, small town, the kind of guy you'd see sitting at the diner in whatever small town. But he made such like dark art and dark film. And so it's hard to get a read on it, but I think something like that, it kind of makes him seem, and not that he seemed inhuman, but it makes him kind of human and relatable. And the fact that, if someone does kind of have this fear of being a parent, of having, this new responsibility, and then someone also kind of dealing with this, guilt of, paying for an abortion. I mean, I think that's something, to go and make like an entire, film about that. I think that's clearly something that weighed very, very heavily on him. It would seem, and I think that's something that kind of makes him relatable. And I think when you dig in there, you can kind of dig through the, contrast between the sort of affable personality and the really dark, the really dark artistic output that he had.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw this. It was like a Vice documentary about Michael Rupert, the guy who wrote Crossing the Rubicon. And he went totally nuts, dude. He just went absolutely insane, talking about how dark the world is and just what an abomination it is. And because this was before I had kids, right before I had kids, I absolutely felt his fear and anguish. And I was like, there's no way I can bring a child into this world. And he actually turned to American Indian spirituality, which kind of touches on this whole Twin Peaks thing. But and he ended up shooting himself in the face with a shotgun. I don't know if you guys know about him. He was like do you guys know the story of Michael Rupert? He outed the FBI for running drugs and stuff like that. He was a interesting character, but I understand David Lynch's anguish for bringing a child into this world. Thank God I've never aborted a child. That's insane. I can't imagine what kind of guilt you feel from that. But it also kind of reminds me of this whole Gnostic idea, because isn't this world supposed to be an abortion or something like that? Isn't that part of the whole?
Yes.
It depends on which sect you're talking about, but in many of them, that's exactly what it is. This is it's not necessarily like a fallen. They don't
prison planet.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a prison planet. Yeah, exactly. It's a
Matrix.
It's a cosmic joke, basically, right? Yeah, it's a cosmic joke, right? It's a bad memory of a town, and the memory's fading fast.
Like metal on your tongue. Somebody's dream of a remnant of a town.
It's like it's corrosive. It's like licking a battery,
So thinking about his work from that perspective, it actually makes a lot more sense. And so the question is, what do you find meaning in? And it sounds like in his interviews and stuff, he's all about just the experience and the feeling of it, and not necessarily anything else.
The ride is it's like the friends we made along the way, man. It's like that kind of thing, but like to the really cringiest sort of extent. That's part of the underlying sort of, it's baked into the cake of that worldview, right? Where it's like the experience, this is the ride, right? This is the Bill Hicks point. It's just a ride, man. You just have to experience. It's the highs and the lows. You just have to experience. And like where you end up doesn't really even matter, because it's like, well, what's what you did along the way that matters? And it's like, okay, fine. But eventually the ride will end, and like, where do you go from there? And that's sort of the problem with this worldview, that, it's like, it when you really take that.
Nihilism, isn't it?
That's the nihilism, but it's a nihilism, but it's also it is baked into the cake of this pantheistic sort of frame of the world. Like if you really think like, oh, like okay, whether it's time is a flat circle or whether an eternal return, or it's like, you know, we're all manifesting. When you take that into account, it's like everything, like, you know, everything becomes permitted because there is no up and down, you know. And what ends up happening is like you equate the good with the bad. And damn, bro, I completely forgot the point I was making with this anyway. So someone else take. Oh, I'm sorry about that. My bad. But you know, you I guess that's the thing is like it inherently can't be true because it's like it doesn't take into account actual good and evil. It doesn't take into account good and bad, and the final, you know, what will happen when the dust settles and there is nothing left and the world is transformed, you know?
Yeah. You know, a lot of what David Lynch's films make me realize is the truth about myself, like we've been talking about, how you can kind of be an observer of your own life and be disconnected in a way. Yeah. And that's not a good place to be in. Like you want to be holistic and you have to find Christ to make yourself whole. And so that's why my final question to you guys, and thank you guys so much for hopping on. Is it good to watch David Lynch's films? Or is it something that maybe not? I know I started watching his stuff when I was a teenager. And it always stuck with me, especially that hobo that comes out from the wall. And Mulholland Drive. Best scene of the movie. And I'll never forget it. It just freaks me out. And yeah, it just terrorized me. And everything else about his films have really terrorized me. So do you think people should watch these films, or do you think they should take extra caution in doing so? I know Jason is a big like Lynch fan. I know BLA is not so much. So why don't you guys go around and give me your conclusive thoughts on David Lynch, and do you recommend him? Jason?
Yeah. So for me, my only statement on it is for mature audiences only. Like you have, you know, if you're immature, you're going to watch these things and they're going to get in you and they're going to do something that you don't understand what it's doing. You know, I look at Lynch as just very honest. Like and I get it. Like we all want to put on a good face and we want to draw attention to the good and the beautiful. We want to ignore the nasty, you know, and that's there's virtue in that, right? There is, but it's also not true, right? It's not, you know, I mean, every one of us has experienced good, the bad, the ugly, and you know, all of it, and it's all there. And so like if you want to sort of project, and I don't mean this derogatorily, because I actually think infantilism is sort of a virtue in a way. Like if you want to project this infantile view of the world that it's all hunky-dory, it's good, and oh, that's bad, just dismiss it outright, don't even give it a thought, whatever. You know, I think if you're mature, if you're honest, you know, you can, you know, see, you can gain a lot of wisdom and insight, and not even wisdom or insight, but just, you know, have a very thought-provoking contemplative session watching these pieces of art. Because like I said, I think art is a contemplative object. You know, you contemplate this piece before you. What does it tell me about me? What does it tell me about the guy who made it? What does it tell me about the people in it? Or, you know, and all, there's value to be mined out of all of that, you know, but there could also be traps or misleadings or nasty, painful things that might trigger things or hits, you know. But again, you got to sort of take a meta position and be like, okay, well, why did it make me feel that way? Well, you know, why was I so disgusted by that? Or why was I so offended by that? Like, oh, it's because I'm a pearl clutching, you know, prude. No, it's because there's something in you that touched and you didn't like it. And so there can be sort of a self-reflection that happens based on those things. Like, that's why I think it's good. And for me, I relate to a lot of the characters. Like the character studies in Lynch's films are incredible. I mean, he's just showing the raw truth of these people that, you know, not a lot of people encounter in their real lives. You know, maybe some of us have encountered Frank Booth before, but not everybody. You know, and so for the person who's never even conjured the idea of a Frank Booth, they're going to be like, "This is a monster. There's nothing to gain from this." You know. But for some of us who you know, maybe have our own Frank Booth inside us, or we've met Frank Booths, or maybe you were even friends with a Frank Booth, you know, I think there's just an honest examination of the mysteries of life, and you know, it's just as beautiful as it is ugly. It's just as bright as it is dark. You know.
Yeah, go ahead, BLA.
Let me respond to that because I'm going to hop off right after this. And thank you, Mello, for having me on here. Yeah, I like what Jason had to say, and you know, especially about experience and discernment. I think one reason that I don't like David Lynch that much is because the first time I saw a David Lynch film was when I was like 5 years old. When did his Dune come out? 1984.
84, yeah.
Yeah, so I would have seen it when I was like 5 on the movie channel by accident at my grandparents' house, and it was on in the middle of the night, and it was like one of the scenes where they got like hooks in the skin, and there's goop vomit and all this stuff, and I just didn't understand. It was so horrible, you know, to me. It's still like this psychic hole in my heart thinking about that movie. But I do think that, you know, one thing that's happening now in general is that, especially in terms of literature, is that people and in education, you know, people are trying to find meaning in identity and things that appeal to their personal experience, and it's the opposite way to go than what we should be doing to find things that are edifying and beautiful. Because great literature and great movies exist because they have archetypes appeal to all people, all characters. We find things in characters that are different from who we are, but we still relate to aspects of them. So I think that, you know, one reason I have trouble with David Lynch is because I find trouble with any characters who seem human at all. They all seem like totems in some sort of dream world. It's not all of them. I think people should watch these movies, especially they're recognized as great films. Mulholland Drive was number 1 on the list of 21st century films for the New York Times. That's something. That's a recognized thing. They put that out. I wouldn't put it there, but people do like the film, and they find it a valuable film. They're great for filmmaking technique. I mean, Lynch was a master filmmaker in that sense. He makes films like moving paintings. And I think that there are aspects of them that are very valuable. But we shouldn't watch movies because they are like what we like. It's like what we should like. We find things that we should like. We read books because they are books that we should understand or should like. So anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for having me on. You guys are the experts
Thank you, BLA.
Of course, on David Lynch, and Matty, of course, because I covered some David Lynch with him, and then Jethro. We did our 5-hour Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me stream of like a few years ago now. Yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having on.
See you, BLA.
Peace.
Okay, Matty, your turn. If you're still there. If not, let's hear from Blood Logos.
Yeah, sure. Real quick, the filmmaking thing that BLA said was what kind of originally got me into David Lynch. I was in film school and really into cinematography and directing and all that kind of stuff. But I agree with what Jason said. And I think that any kind of media that you consume can affect you if you don't have discernment. And so I don't think that someone shouldn't watch a movie just because of that. That's it.
Thank you, Blood Logos. Matty, are you there?
Yes. Yeah, I keep having to switch audio inputs because like the audio will drop out, and I'll have to go into the settings and change it. And there's like 3 to choose from, and I have to keep going through the 3 until I can find one that's working. So, but yeah, Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think that I think everybody's points so far have been really good on this question. I think it's a really good question. But yeah, I mean, I think from a filmmaking standpoint, Lynch was a master filmmaker. He and Robert Rodriguez are like right up there at the top for me. As far as my favorite filmmakers go, and I think that I think I think it depends somewhat on if I generally try not to tell people what they should or shouldn't do with their lives, but I think from I guess if you can handle it would be the way to put it, because these are a lot of his work. I mean, one of his works that doesn't get talked about very rarely is one called The Straight Story, and that one that's like a family film. It's a very that's a good one, and like I said, it rarely gets mentioned among his work. But outside of The Straight Story, and there was another short-lived show he had. I haven't seen it, but I think it's pretty obscure. I don't think you can even find it anywhere. I don't think that one was all that dark. But a lot of his stuff is really dark. And BLA mentioned that he and I had covered some of his work. We did Blue Velvet and Lost Highway on BLA's channel, and those are two films I hadn't seen them for a while, and then I rewatched them when we did that analysis, and I felt very unsettled after watching them. And Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. I've seen movies as an adult and that I kind of found unsettling or unnerving or kind of maybe a little uneasy. But those, and I will admit this, I don't care. Those are the only things that I've seen as an adult that I've like genuinely been freaked out by. I'm like, this is like genuinely scary. Like that scene, like that first scene where Bob appears. It's like, this is like actually genuinely terrifying. And then that scene in Lost Highway at the party where the was it Robert Blake's character comes up and he like calls, Bill Pullman calls his house. It's like, that's genuinely unsettling. And so I think that if you can handle that kind of thing, and maybe in moderation, but even though as much as I like David Lynch's movies, I found that I don't watch them as much as I used to, and I'm not claiming to be like super spiritual or that I'm on this lofty level of spirituality, but I've found that as I really have made an effort to grow in the faith and take it more and more seriously, is that I've sort of just lost the taste for a lot of movies I used to watch and a lot of music I used to listen to. That there's things that I don't have an interest in it anymore, and I don't have an interest to watch Lynch's films as often as I maybe would have before, because that even though I heard somewhere that, and I don't know if this is true or not, intuitively just it seems true, is that your brain, even though you may be conscious, you're like, I'm watching a movie, but your brain can't tell the difference between what you're seeing, something that's real and something that's not. And so when you're seeing these kinds of things that Lynch puts in his movie, on some level, as I understand it, it is real, at least in the way your sort of brain is interpreting it. So anyway, all that to say that I think it would just depend on who it is. I think people, if you haven't watched these films or these shows before, that you should kind of know what you're getting into. And I also think if it's one of those things that if you start watching it, you're like, this is making me uneasy, it's unsettling, I don't like, this is like spiritually bad for me, whatever it may be, I think turn it off, don't watch it. I think that's totally fine. Just because other people are talking about these things, watch them. Not everything isn't for everyone. So anyway, not to sound like I'm giving a cop out of an answer, but I think it just depends on the individual. And so all that to say, Mel, thank you so much for having me on. I always enjoy being on here. Really appreciated the insight from everybody. Blood Logos, I think this is the first time we've been on a stream together, but really enjoyed your insights on that, and always great to talk to everybody else on here. So great to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you, Matty. And how about you, John? Any parting words for us?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, thank you, Mel, always for having me back. Appreciate it. Jason, it's always a pleasure. Blood Logos. It's I didn't even know who you were before this, but I'm glad that we had the chance to collaborate together because you had some really good stuff to say. So thank you, my friend. And Matty, you all right. My boy, dude. But Matty, I don't know if you remember when we did the AI stream last year. If you remember, one of the things that we were talking about, about how AI art and stuff like that. And one of the points that I made was sort of like the overarching point that I made about that. Mel, you were on the stream with us actually. Like it was the three of us doing this. And one of the points that I made was simply the fact that one of the things where I feel like AI art won't necessarily go anywhere, like in the same sense as like regular art was, is because the soul of the person that makes the art is imprinted on the art itself. And when something that is fundamentally soulless makes it, you eventually will realize it doesn't matter how photorealistic it is. If there's no soul into it, then you won't actually have it. I'm thinking about Twin Peaks now, and I'm thinking about so one of the things that I've quoted multiple times throughout this is True Detective, the first season with McConaughey and everything. And that's, in some sense, that's darker, than Twin Peaks is. But the one thing is that like how you said, Matty, like how you are you don't always necessarily have you don't have the same desire to sort of go after this sort of thing like you did many years ago. And I sort of feel the exact same way. But there's something like a True Detective season 1. I do have that desire to keep watching it. And I think because there's a fundamental difference in the orientation of the works themselves, right? And it goes back to the fact that the soul of the person is imprinted in the work, right? And not only is it the soul of the person, but it's the soul of the thing that's driving the person. And I will say this. I will tell you this, folks. I think that for better or for worse, right? No matter how dark True Detective season 1 gets, that is the depiction of a person becoming a Christian. Because Russ at the end of that is someone who is he's actually, dealing with Christ. That is why that show actually has the impact that it does. Because that's the state that Saint Seraphim Rose talked about. That this is the atheist is the person who's actually grappling with God and is actually trying to find God. And that's exactly who Russ Cole is. But the difference between that and Twin Peaks is that Twin Peaks, again, is a depiction of an incantation. It is a depiction of a person who is becoming the plaything of the other side, of the demonic fundamentally, And so I'm not going to say anything other than what you guys already said, which is that you have to really have an understanding about how sensitive you are. And if there's even a question of an iota in your mind about it, then I would say don't watch it. I think probably the only thing that's probably, worth it and for any person is like the first, second season of Twin Peaks, and then that's it. Because I think everything else really is just I think everything else is too loaded. I think it's way too loaded. And if you are sensitive to this stuff, you probably shouldn't. It's like what we were talking about with we came from electricity in the convenience store with Rob Ager's point about the screen and stuff like that. The soul of the person is not the only thing that's imprinted in that. It is the spirit that they're embodying. It is the spirit that they're letting into the world. And if it is a demonic spirit, you will be imprinted with that, right? Okay? There was some truth to what Nietzsche said about staring into the abyss. It will gaze into you if you let it, okay? And the black screen that we're all looking at right now is itself an abyss. And so the thing that's beyond that screen, the thing that's coming into it right now, if that is something that is demonic, the demonic will gaze into you. If it's something that's of God, then you will have that imbued into you, or at least you will move closer to it in some sense, hopefully, you know? And so keep that in mind. It's not worth the gamble if you're very sensitive to that stuff and you don't know what you're walking into. You have to proceed with caution. That's what I would say.
Mela, how would you answer? What's your answer to that question?
Yeah.
Who? Me?
You.
Yeah, what would you say to that question?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, when I saw these films, I was very young. So I wouldn't say that it messed me up, but it did wake me up. Kind of like Jeffrey. I see Jeffrey in the closet as like a little kid, like looking in on the reality of his parents or something, you know, like the dark reality. So it's traumatizing. So I don't know. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do, what to watch. I think everyone kind of agreed that you have to have discernment. You have to be strong enough to watch these films. I think someone said it's hard to tell if Lynch is a genius or an idiot. And I think he's obviously a genius. But I can see why people are just so turned off by his works. And but one thing for sure is that he's very original. And if that's what you like in life, you want to see something original, you want to see something unique, you want to see something like raw, watch a David Lynch film. There's so many films out there that are just garbage because it's like a replication of a replication of a replication. You're not going to get that from Lynch. So, and I was reading an article and someone said that Theo Von, about Norm Macdonald when he passed, said that it's like losing a book that there's no copy to. And that's exactly what, you know, the passing of David Lynch was.
Yes.
And so anyway, just watch it just for that sake, just for the art.
There's a fine line between being an idiot and being a true genius. You know, people on the edge, like it's like the horseshoe theory. It's like they're actually the people close to each other, the people on the two edges, basically. Those are the people that are the closest to each other. It's like one's the idiot, one's the genius, and it's like there is in some sense like I think you can there's a reason to believe that you can be both, I think, you know.
Yes, absolutely. He's a fringe artist and he brings the fringe to the fore, you know. I think somebody was saying like a Lynchian character or like side character is someone you'd see on, you know, the subway at like 3 a.m. or something. You know, these people are out there and he he characterizes them so perfectly. And so just for interest, for novelty, if that's the kind of thing you're into, you know, watch David Lynch film. But other than that, if you're sensitive and, you know, you're like me when I was watching that freaking Michael Rupert Vice documentary, you know, stay away from it. So that's all I got to say. Thank you, Matty, for asking though. Well, you guys, this was fun. It got really nerdy for me because I haven't seen Twin Peaks in ages, so I have nothing to say about that. But it was still really fun. You guys are awesome. I hope we can do it again. Let me know if you have any ideas for something we can do in the future. I love bouncing off ideas on, you know, books, films. I think it's a great thing to kind of, you know, hone in on and just talk about. So thank you guys so much. And thank you everyone in the chat for sticking around. And yeah, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you.